Join us on the program right now. Very pleased to have with us from townhall.com, Katie Pavlich. Katie, good evening.
Good evening, Cam. How are you?
I am excellent. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, as always.
You bet. You were writing a couple of days ago about the latest in Fast and Furious. We now have 3 officials with the ATF who have been suspended, I guess. The ATF Assistant Director of the Office of Professional Responsibility and Security Operations, Bill McMahon, ATF Acting Deputy Director Billy Hoover, and ATF's Assistant Director in charge of Field Operations, Mark Chait. These, as far as we know, are the only 3 individuals at either ATF or DOJ that right now have been suspended pending the release of that Inspector General's report?
Right. Outside of Vince Shepler, who's the whistleblower who has received retaliation for coming forward with the truth about Fast and Furious, right? Bill McMahon, keep in mind, was one of the people in ATF who was actually promoted after Fast and Furious in August, who was redirected to the Assistant Director of Professional Responsibility after being in charge of Fast and Furious. He was put in charge of ethics for ATF, which was a joke in itself. And remember that Mark Chait was responsible for emailing back and forth with Bill Newell about pushing gun control regulations through Fast and Furious. So it's a good thing that these guys are being held responsible. They've been suspended as of now from their cushy positions in Washington, D.C. But as you and I know, this is just a start, and I'm looking forward to criminal complaints being forged against these guys, because that's really what's going to get us results in the cleanup of ATF rather than just a kind of a slap on the wrist and a suspension.
I'm curious. I know you talked with Jay Dobbins, who was the special agent who went public on CBS about a year ago and actually, really broke the story. And he said that this isn't nearly enough. He wonders, is it likely an advance response to the preliminary OIG report being circulated for comment? And he said the problem is that many more were involved. I wonder, clearly it looks like we're going to see this Inspector General's report released at some point in the near future. If you've started to see some of the suspensions, Holder's testifying on February the 2nd. Again, I don't have any inside information here, but I would suspect that Holder would like to have that Inspector General's report to wave around when he's there before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee.
Right, and he's definitely going to have the report, because as I'm hearing from my sources, the Inspector General report is going to come down hard on ATF rather than DOJ, right? So remember, the Inspector General was employed by Eric Holder before she took her position currently in DOJ. So we're going to see the Inspector General report really come down on ATF's Phoenix office rather than holding DOJ officials responsible for the program, even though many of them knew that guns were walking as early as April 2010. We know that Lanny Brewer, the deputy or assistant attorney general for the criminal division, knew that guns were walking, claims that he forgot to tell Eric Holder about it. He was heavily involved, but the Inspector General is definitely covering for Eric Holder on this. So the ATF suspensions, so to say, aren't a surprise, but once again, going back to what Jay Dobbins said, it's not enough. And I'm looking forward to seeing criminal complaints filed against not only the 3 that were suspended, Mark Chait, Billy Hoover, and Bill McMahon, but also, Bill Newell, David Vos, Hope McAllister, Lanny Brewer for possibly perjury charges, and really seeing what's going to be, how Eric Holder is going to be held responsible for his actions in this program.
I think a lot of people are waiting to see that happen. I'm curious, Katie. Here we are a couple of weeks before he testifies before Representative Issa and the rest of the House Oversight Committee. Any idea or any speculation as to what you think the focus will be on the next time Holder appears? Obviously there was that exchange between Issa and Holder. When Holder was testifying before the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Issa wanted documents from DOJ after February 4th of 2011, and Holder had said, no, you're not going to get them. Are we looking at maybe? It certainly seemed like we were witnessing the maybe a little foreshadowing of a big confrontation. Do you think we're going to see that?
I think we will, and I think ICE is excited to have Eric Holder under oath. I know that before the House Judiciary Committee, it was kind of strange how they didn't swear Eric Holder in. They, tried to claim that he was under oath despite having to hold his hand up and say that he promised to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help him God. So I think that ICE is holding on to some pretty damning evidence, but I don't expect Eric Holder to budge on any of this. I think that he'll refer back to, as he has throughout the past year, the Inspector General's report, and he'll also say that he acted responsibly by calling for an internal investigation of Operation Fast and Furious, despite the Justice Department not willing to cooperate with the external investigation of the program or cooperating with the idea of appointing a special prosecutor to come in with some fresh eyes and really determine what happened here. And as you and I have said all along, if DOJ and ATF had nothing to hide and the hands of people like Eric Holder and Barack Obama even were clean, they would have come out a long time ago and thrown everything out on the table and let us see what really happened. But, you know, it's always the cover-up that gets these politicians in trouble. And I would just caution people that when the Inspector General's report really does come out, that I would be skeptical of the content, considering that, once again, you know, the Inspector General working for Eric Holder worked for him before she was even in the Justice Department. So there's going to be a lot more evidence that needs to be, gone through before this whole thing's over, and we've really got to, stick to the facts of the only people we've been able to trust throughout this whole process have been the whistleblowers and officials within DOJ, and the Inspector General have conflicts of interest, and they haven't told us anything other than lies throughout this entire process.
Well, that's and as you look back over all that we've learned over the past year, I mean, there's still so many unresolved questions out there, but it's amazing to me that you actually had the Justice Department take back or try to take back the very first response that it gave Congress because it was factually wrong. They were dishonest. They weren't telling the truth about what had happened.
No, Sam. According to Eric Holder, it was just inaccurate.
It was just inaccurate. False. You're right. I'm sorry. It was not false. And that's, and so we're playing this game where, again, I'm just reminded of Clinton talking about what the definition of is. Now we've got, false versus inaccurate. And we're hiding behind these semantic games when we just want to know what the hell happened.
Right, and once again, like Eric Holder has referred to over and over again in testimony, when really specific questions come up about what happened during Fast and Furious, he's going to refer to the Inspector General's report. And, I doubt that DOJ officials will really be held responsible for this. I think what's going to come out is they'll blame ATF and they'll say, we weren't briefed enough on the details of it, and therefore ATF officials in Phoenix, such as Bill Newell, weren't really telling us all the details, and we couldn't really know what was going on if we weren't given all the factual details up the chain. Regardless of, the cover-up of lies saying, ATF acting director at the time, Kenneth Nelson, didn't know the guns were walking. Turns out he was watching them walk from his cushy D.C. office on a wiretap video feed. It's going to come down to, well, they're all claiming that this was a bad program, but no one is willing to take responsibility for it and face the consequences for it. It's almost like, well, I did my job and this guy didn't do his. Well, and then that person says, I did my job, but this person didn't do his, and they're just kind of shuffling around the responsibility for the program when really we're not getting any results, which is, why it's so important, as Representative Issa has said, to appoint a special prosecutor and really come down hard with criminal charges on officials within ATF and DOJ who aren't above the law and hold them accountable for trafficking guns to Mexico.
Absolutely right. Hey, Katie, it's always a pleasure having you on the program. Have a fantastic evening, and I know we'll be talking to you again very soon.
We'll talk to you soon, Cam. Thanks.
All right. Katie Pavlich joining us from townhall.com.